trauma.
Welcome to Grief, Trauma, and Your Mama.
We laugh, we grow. Take a deep breath, press play now. Welcome to the show.
I'm Angela Schellenberg, and I am the host of this podcast. I am a grief and trauma therapist, and I specialize in attachment, grief, and equine-assisted learning. And I started this podcast because I lost both of my parents when I was coming of age. My mother, I was 11 when she was institutionalized. I was 16 when my father was gunned down and murdered, and 22, and both of my parents were dead. And I didn't know what to do. I was literally just thinking, how do I survive this? What do I do? And for so long, I thought I was broken. One part of me did that. The other part of me just functioned really high. A lot of people that knew me wouldn't know all the stuff that had happened to me because I was so good at shoving it under. And one of the things I want you to know about grief is that grief lives in the body. It literally is an attachment trauma. If you're coming of age and you lose the two people who are supposed to regulate you the most, that becomes an attachment trauma. And nobody told me that. And I think that's one of the reasons that I do the work that I do, is to help you understand that grief lives in the body, just like trauma does, and it can create a trauma response, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so many of us don't know that. We are told, do the 5 stages, you lose someone you love, and there's just not a lot of guidance. I remember looking for the manual, and so I think what I tried to do is create it. And in the best version that I could, based on all the years of healing and doing a lot of attachment work and trauma work and EMDR, especially attachment-focused EMDR. So I want you to know that a couple of things. Grief is trauma because it's a break in attachment. And the other thing is there's a lot of things it affects. The first thing is identity. Like, who am I after I lose the person I love? How do I love myself more? Self-esteem. And then how am I safe? Those are the 3 things that grief sort of takes away from us, especially when we're coming of age. And so if you've lost someone you love, it's my goal in this podcast to just help explain to you that grief is trauma because it's a break in attachment, and that attachment wounds are always healable. So that's the message. When I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I'm not broken and I can get through this. And that's why I do the work that I do. And I want to bring this podcast to you because today I added something to this formula. Grief, trauma, and your mama. You know, that relationship, that first relationship that we have with our mom makes or breaks every relationship in our life. The love we receive or didn't receive. And so often we look to our mothers to regulate our nervous system, and many of us didn't know how to do that. And so I met Rosemary Riggs. She's the person I'm bringing on today. And I met her because she's my equine teacher. And when I put the horses in with this whole grief and trauma and your mama, I realized that they did something that I had no idea. I had a horse named Destiny when I was 16, and Destiny used to lay down in the pasture and I would lay on his neck. And I didn't realize how much he was saving me, like regulating my nervous system. You know, when I looked to my mom and she was mentally ill and institutionalized, I didn't learn nervous system regulation. And I think a lot of us did not learn nervous system regulation. But the horse was regulating my nervous system. And when I brought the therapy that I had learned and all of the modalities that I had learned to the horse, I was like, oh my gosh, this is everything. Because so many times when we lose people we love, we don't always trust others. And horses have this incredible ability to downregulate the nervous system. And so I'm so excited to bring to you Rosemary Riggs. Rosemary is the owner of Shakti Ranch, and she runs an equine-assisted learning training program that I went through. And her and I worked together at my Healing with Horses Somatic Grief Retreat. It's in Malibu, and it was just listed by National Geographic as one of the top retreats in the world. And so we're so happy. And if you're interested at all, definitely look us up. But I am so excited to introduce to you Rosemary because she has been instrumental in the work that I do with clients, helping them with grief and loss and the horses. So I look forward to having her as a guest today. We're going to welcome her. Thank you. Rosemary, hi.
Hi.
Hi. In my world, in grief and trauma, so often grief lives in the body. And I didn't know what that meant. And a lot of times in working with clients, I didn't know, grief lives in the body. For you, that's something that surprises people because they don't often think of grief as an attachment trauma. They think that grief is just something that you do and you go through the 5 stages and then you should be over it. And these are the messages that we get. And so in your work, you've sat with so many people on the ranch, and a lot of people, I think grief touches so many of us, not just in grief and loss, but in transitions and divorces and all sorts of things. And so in your work, what I'm wondering is, what do you actually see with the horses, how grief shows up in the body? And in your experience, how does that show up for you in the paddock or on the field or with the horses? Yeah.
I think that I love what you said about how that the grief is present in the body, and there's this belief that it is just kind of an emotion or this linear process that you move through.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the way that grief shows up in equine therapy sessions is often on the heels of getting in touch with that younger part of ourself, the child part who endured traumatic experience, and so kind of when we're processing trauma, especially I think within talk therapy, it brings a lot of awareness and a lot of understanding. But I don't know that it, from that awareness, I don't know if there is always that actual physical embodied connection to how the body is representing that traumatic event. Yeah. And so what I've seen is that as we get in touch with these experiences, the body is representing it, and how the body represents grief. What I've seen is there can be kind of a collapse physically. Yeah. I will see the horses drop their head really low. I've even, believe it or not, I've even seen horses shed a tear. Wow. And they are mirroring that grief back to the client, the physical embodiment of the grief.
Wow. You just said a word, they're mirroring that grief. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when I say that word mirror, what I mean is that the horse is doing a behavior that is representing the emotion, the inner psyche of the client. Wow. So for example, we can talk about sadness, that emotion of sadness, and how a horse may mirror it back is, like I just said, maybe dropping its head. You might see almost like within the horse, a physical softening. I've even seen a horse go to the ground, right? It's standing up, and then now it's on the ground, and it's just going into that collapse at times, which might be mirroring depression. It might be mirroring overwhelm. It might be mirroring exhaustion.
Wow. I was just thinking of one of the experiences that I had on the paddock where the person was really in deep grief, and Sophie, your lead mare, she literally collapsed. And I was just like, whoa. And I remember thinking, I've got to tell Rosemary, maybe something's wrong with the horse. But I realized that was her mirroring just the intense grief of that kind of early mother loss in my case. It was fascinating.
Yes.
Wow. So what you're saying is that the horses kind of mirror the person's body or nervous system and their grief.
Yes.
And by mirroring it, what does that do for the client or for the person in the arena? What does that do?
Well, I think I just got the chills
I saw that one.
Because not only being witnessed by another sentient being that's holding no judgment. Yeah. So side topic, horses don't have as developed prefrontal cortex as us humans. So they don't have the ability to hold judgment like we do. So they also really don't have much of an ability to be in future thoughts or past thoughts. They're just right here, right now.
So they don't judge us.
So they're not judging us. So being witnessed by a sentient being that is not judging us, they're not feeling sorry for us. They are just representing through their body what they are sensing and feeling from you. So one, there's the witnessing, which is so right there. That's a cathartic experience. And then I think the other piece is that oftentimes they're mirroring back to us aspects of our psyche or emotional state that we're not even aware of. Yeah. Right. So as we see this horse move into this behavior, and we have a equine assisted therapist or equine assisted learning facilitator who's just sharing their observations and kind of bringing that inquiry back to us. What do you make of this?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's that connection that is really, I think, kind of the healing part of this traumatic imprint from long ago.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I love about the work you do, when you ask that question, what do you make of this? It takes it off of power over rather than power with. It doesn't put the therapist in a position of authority or the equine assisted learning, because I think you and I share this, is that the client knows the most about their life.
Yes.
And they are the ones who, they know so much. And if someone's coming in with power over trying to say, this is what you need, it isn't organic. It isn't natural. It doesn't get to that thing under the thing.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing you say is that is, those horses mirror that part of you that maybe you can't even see. Mm-hmm. And by you asking, what do you make of that? They'll go, oh, that reminds me of this time this happened or this happened. Is that correct?
Exactly. And so then that puts the client in the experience of more volition, of connection to their deepest knowing. And the traumatic imprint or that moment of rupture within attachment, that client who was likely a child didn't have volition. And they weren't resourced. So in this moment, they're really connecting with what I call their higher self, their wise adult self.
Absolutely. And you just said something, that I think this is really important with grief, is that grief is trauma because it's a break in attachment. And the trauma isn't just what happened to you, but it's what didn't happen. It's the love you didn't receive, the people that didn't show up, the emotional attunement you didn't have, the mirroring that wasn't there. And so I can see how this relates so much back to the horses when they're mirroring you and you lost that. It's such a big deal.
It is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Also known as it's closing the loop on that traumatic imprint. So it's bringing repair and resolution to the rupture that might have happened 3 decades ago.
Wow. And 80% of our trauma lives in our body. And so often we figure it all out in our head. I know I did this for a long time. I studied all the books, read all the self-help things, and realized that, wow, I wasn't getting to that, with talk therapy. Yes. And so when you think about the horses and the body, it sounds like you've seen so much change in horses and people with trauma and grief and loss in the paddock with what you're talking about. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's palpable.
Really?
Right. So not only is this experience happening between client and horse, there's also a therapist or facilitator who's bearing witness to this experience and is able to reflect back in words sometimes, or sometimes there's no words at all because it's a felt sense of shift.
And do you see that physically in people?
I do.
Like, what does it look like?
I do. So it's, once again, I have the chills thinking about it. It is to see the light come back into someone's eyes from that shift in perspective, that they have gone years, decades thinking that this is what it was. It was the story of, this was my fault. Yeah. Or perhaps it's the story of, if only I had been better. Yeah. Right. There's the not enough, too much. And then coming into that realization that what happened, the experience that they had no control over.
It wasn't them.
It wasn't them.
Yeah.
But in this moment, right here, right now, they are reclaiming their volition. They are reclaiming their experience of their body and how their body is responding to this kind of, what I say, returning to the scene of the crime. Yeah. So they're creating a new neural pathway.
Wow. I'm like, wow, because it's so deep. And I have seen it and witnessed with you and seen just how deep that shift is. And as an EMDR attachment therapist too, when you say that shift that's palpable, that you see the light come back in their eyes, that's exactly what EMDR does, because it takes that charge away from what they were carrying for so long, like it must be my fault, which is kind of moving into the next thing I wanted to talk about is grief, trauma, and your mama. It all comes back to your mom, the love you received, the love you didn't receive, and that sometimes bearing witness, like you talked about, or being nurtured, or having safety in the world, and your sense of self-esteem. Children always think everything's their fault. So if there was a lot of trauma early on, the child they don't think, what did you do? They think, what did I do?
Yes.
And
exactly.
so that speaks to those earlier parts. Our mom is always our first attachment. And this always shocked me when I learned this. It's like looking at our mom. You look to our mom to regulate your nervous system. For me, my mom was mentally ill and high anxiety. And so that's what I got mirrored back. Like our nervous system is literally developed by our mother and her generational trauma. We also get the beautiful things about our mom too. So it's not just one thing,
Right.
but the mother thing, this was so big in grief, because sometimes what I see in my work is that people come in and they've lost someone they love. And it not only the new loss brings back so much old loss, it brings them all the way back to like their first love, which is their mom, and the way they learned to like take care of themselves. So the way they learned about their nurturance, or the way that they learned protection or guidance. There were so many ways in which that shows up in the mother wound. And I am trained with Kelly McDaniel, who does Mother Hunger, and her 3 things are nurturance, protection, guidance, which are the 3 things that she names are missing sometimes in the mother wound. If one of those goes missing, or all 3 of them, then it can be a big break in attachment, which makes grief harder as you're trying to do that. So for you, I also think the other 3 things that are things that I've realized is identity. Like, who am I after my mom's gone? Who was I before she was gone? And then self-esteem. How do I love myself more? That's what we talked about in the body. And then safety. How am I safe? Because when the bottom drops out, that picnic napkin table on the top is just pulled, and your sense of safety in the world is gone. So for you, how do you see that mother wound showing up? Because I know in my work, it always comes out. It was my mom used to do this, or there's this big aha. What have you noticed with that in your work in equine and the mother thing?
Well, yes, I certainly see it. The nurturance, guidance, protection. So I love that framework, and I think that those domains are such a great entry point into an equine therapy session, right? Navigating, whatever the topic is. I think those are relevant domains. So I can speak to my own experience in terms of my relationship with my mom. There was a lot of nurturance, there was a lot of guidance, there was not protection. Okay. So I grew up in a family of origin with a father who was physically and verbally abusive, and I didn't have the protection. So we were all enduring this man who had rage and was, now I understand he was dysregulated. Yeah. Right.
And had his own generational trauma.
And he had exactly. He had his own traumatic imprints from childhood. So I didn't have protection. Yeah. So I went out into the world unconsciously recreating relationships that were not safe. So it wasn't until I started receiving equine therapy about 15 years ago that I became aware of how boundaryless I was, how I was, the common denominator in my relationship was really me being attracted to abusive men. And it was an experience receiving equine therapy where this horse kept nipping at me. And the facilitator said to me, "Are you going to just stand there and keep taking it? This horse is biting you." And in that moment, Angela, it was like everything. It was just like the floor dropped out.
What did you do?
Of my life. Because I realized I saw so clearly that the relationship that I was in, the marriage that I was in, was abusive, right? Yeah. I had been trying so hard to make it work, and maybe if I do this, or maybe if I do that, or if my tone is better,
if I fawn a little more,
right? And so it was a felt sense of, this is how I'm moving through life. I'm getting bit, and I just keep standing here taking it, hoping that it'll get better, but it ain't getting better. No. It's actually getting worse. So that is all to say that in these equine therapy sessions, we can have an experience with this sentient being who's really metaphorically representing what is happening in our life. And then because it's not the human or the perpetrator, we have a little more perspective. Because we are within 20 feet of this sentient being, our nervous system they're helping us to stay regulated so that we can learn better, that we have more perspective. We just have more access to what is most true.
You bring up such a good point. How do horses do that? Like what about them makes them mirror and makes them do all that?
So horses, so they're prey animals.
Yeah.
So they are highly receptive to their environment for their survival. So as I say that, sometimes people will jump to, okay, well, are they hypervigilant? No, it's not hypervigilance. Hypervigilance would be, it's actually, you lose perspective if you're in hypervigilance. Things become a little too intense. So they have this really soft, sentient awareness. They also have the advantage of having eyes on the side of their head. Yeah. So they can literally see almost 360 degrees. Wow. So they can see what's going on around them. They can hear what's going on around them. So they just have kind of this physical superpower of sensing and feeling what's in their environment. And then from that, they're herd animals. So they are looking for harmony. They have within these herds this system to really kind of look out for each other. So they really operate from interdependence, not hyper individualism like a lot of us humans, nor are they in a way of being where they're trying to predate upon each other.
Wow. So that makes them be aware and sense kind of our nervous systems. And if they can detect that we're unsettled somewhere, they're going to mirror that back. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. They want same. They want harmony.
I have to tell that. I remember this when I came, I was doing equine. I found you, through the Google. I'm so thankful. But I remember coming in and I was like, I'm pretty good. I've got it all. And I remember when I arrived, the horses ran and you looked at me and said, what do you make of that? And I remember thinking, oh no, they see me. And then immediately that shame comes like, I must be broken or something's wrong. And what I realized is how much I was not in touch with my body, because that's what trauma does. It sort of cuts that off and makes it so you can't do that. So that horse was picking up something in me that I didn't even realize. And that was so profound in looking at, this is what we mean by somatic work. Yes. It's such a big buzzword right now, somatic. Like what are your thoughts on that, somatic?
Well, I'm a lover of etymology. And so I kind of go back to, that Greek root of soma. It's just, we're talking about the body, right? Yeah. And then we're talking about, okay, what are the physical sensations that I'm noticing in my body? Yeah. And then what are they representing in terms of my emotions, my thought forms, belief? Yeah. And horses are such great partners for any type of somatic experiencing because they really live in their body. So because they don't have that developed prefrontal cortex, they're operating more from the right hemisphere of their brain, the sensing, the feeling, the intuition. And then because of their size, they're influencing us via their electromagnetic frequency of their heart. They're influencing us into that way of being too.
Wow. So what you're saying is just them mirroring that brings out a part of us in our body that we're holding that is so subconscious and even unconscious and even subconscious.
They are, I think, in my opinion, they are the absolute best therapeutic partners for bringing us into more awareness of subconscious and unconscious beliefs.
Yeah, which is exactly EMDR. So this is why the horse. Yeah. And I think also too, like, why not talk therapy? Like, how come the talk therapy people say talk therapy isn't working for this? What do you make of that? Like, of why talk therapy doesn't, and I love talk therapy. I've done it a long time and I haven't. I think it's helpful, but I realize after adding the horses to my clients and that's equine assisted learning that it is like, sometimes I feel like it's like they've done 5 EMDR sessions in one, that attachment focused EMDR, which is having those 3 elements of attachment in the session when you're doing that. But for you, what do you make of that? People say, oh, you can't just talk it out.
Okay. So I love talk therapy.
Yeah. I know.
I've been in talk therapy since I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I still have a talk therapist that I work with from time to time.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, in my experience.
Yeah.
Talk therapy is great for bringing awareness. Awareness does not change make. So we can have a lot of awareness. Yes, this happened.
Yeah.
Yes, I now understand that this wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Or even I now understand that this wasn't my fault. But making that link between that awareness and that understanding and actually shifting your nervous system, rewiring new neural pathways, having new safe experiences with attachment, that happens in the body. And within an equine therapy session, because you're partnering with these sentient beings that are 100% feeling you, and also guiding you into some other ways of being.
You know, I was thinking about this one. I was asking you, when you think about your work, because you started this a long time ago, is there a story that you have or something that comes to mind of how equine therapy works? Like if you walked us through a session, or one that stands out in your mind, like one that almost made you fall to your knees, because as we're bearing witness, sometimes we see these things happen in the paddock. I know I've had this myself. What is there a story that stands out to you, or if you walked people through what it looks like? Or a story that you have, what comes to your mind?
I think that there's so many, but but I think that one that was just so I noticed that I had a visceral reaction to was a young woman came to me, and it was her first time doing an equine therapy session. And what I like to do is just invite the client to start to move around the paddock, get a feel for the space, get a feel for the horses, and that also allows the horses to get a feel for them. So, and then from there, I like to kind of keep the questions somewhat general to see what the subconscious or unconscious presents. Yeah. So I was facilitating this young woman, and she had moved into probably maybe about 10 feet of my lead mare, Sophie. And Sophie started nodding her head pretty aggressively, just up and down and up and down. And I was observing this and looking at this young woman who was really presenting as pretty calm and didn't get the sense that there was a lot of emotion coming up. But I just kind of reflected back to this young woman. I said, I'm noticing that Sophie's moving her head quite abruptly. And she's like, yeah, I'm noticing. I'm like, what do you make of that? Mm-hmm. And she got really quiet, and she said, I think her neck is bothering her. It seems like she's having some pain. And so then I flipped the question back to her. I said, are you having pain, experiencing pain in your neck? Then it was just like this moment. It was just like, it's like the air, like everything.
I felt that. Yeah.
It's like everything just slowed down. It's like the air got heavy and the moment got very still. And what came from that is that she had recently been physically assaulted. Wow. In an intimate relationship. She didn't even have to go into the details.
Yeah.
Right? It was there.
Wow.
And this horse, Sophie, was mirroring back the pain that she was feeling right then, right now, physically in her neck, but also the emotional pain and the sadness. And I think also the terror of being in that moment that was so scary that I would imagine that she hadn't, I not imagine, I know that this was the first time that she had really processed it. And it's certainly not the topic that
wasn't what she came in for. No.
But this is what came forward. And this is this is just an example of how these horses really help us access our unconscious.
Wow. That's such a powerful story and so palatable. I mean, I was thinking of the first time that I really experienced this. There was the one time when I met him, and then I was with you, and I had, lost my horse when I was 16. After my father's murder, they took him away, and Destiny was his name, and I never saw him again. And I remember standing there, and the horse just kept coming around. I think it was Abe, and he would come back around, and it would come back around again. And you said, what do you make of that? And I just got big tears in my eyes. I went, oh my God, this is like full circle. Like he's back, and maybe Destiny's okay. And this is what I was supposed to do. It was just so beautiful. And there aren't really words. I think sometimes that's what I struggle with. Because how do you explain this horse thing? It's a little woo. And people that don't know about this can sometimes be a little skeptical, what are you just making this up? Maybe, okay, maybe, but when you experience it, there aren't words, you don't need them, because it is so somatic and so embodied that it changes what you didn't even know you were carrying.
I think it has the capacity to change the fabric of your being, to rewire neural pathways. And I think there is a bit of an esoteric aspect to this therapeutic modality, but there's also a lot of science behind it, based in the electromagnetic frequency of the horse's heart, based in mirror neuron, based in also this piece that we are connecting more with our animal body too, and connecting with our intuition.
Yeah, and I thought about this too, because I think so many women that I work with that have lost their moms early, or had early mother loss, or lost anyone they love, they have a lot of animals, or they're somehow attracted to animals. What do you make of that? Because now I know the horse is kind of like a big dog. But can you talk a little bit about that EMF and what that even means?
Yeah. So all mammals have an electromagnetic frequency. So this is measurable. It's emitted from the heart. Yeah. And because horses are 10 to 12 times the size of us, their EMF is going to be that much stronger. So it goes out almost 30 feet. Wow. And so, what I like to share with folks is that even if you are standing within 20 to 30 feet of a horse, you are receiving the benefit. So you're getting that nervous system regulation. Your body, your animal body is sensing and feeling their animal body. And they're guiding you into more relaxation, more perspective.
Which is so different than what we do in talk therapy, because so often I find people can get triggered when they bring up the thing. And so what you're saying is that EMF kind of downregulates the nervous system and allows them to kind of titrate what they're holding in their body to their head, which is another form of EMDR. But that's so fascinating, because so many of my clients have dogs, or in the Zoom sessions, especially during the pandemic, I see these animals swirling around them when they feel a little distress in what they're talking about. So that's what the horses are like, a big dog, but times 1,200 pounds. Exactly. And so the way that your dog can nurture you, the horses do that just tenfold, is kind of how it works. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Wow, Rosemary, this has been so enlightening. And I wonder, for you, if you could tell us a little bit about, your ranch and what you do, and how the listeners here, this is a little insight into just the work that Rosemary does. And this is why I wanted her to be one of the first people on my podcast, because your work, Rosemary, has changed my life as a therapist so much in the direction of just how I help people with grief. And so if someone is interested in what we're talking about here and they want to figure out how they can get involved, can you tell us a little bit about your ranch? I know you have some beautiful new goats and all sorts of things, but tell us a little bit about how the listener could work with you, could find you. I mean, one of the ways is in the Healing with Horses Somatic Grief Retreat that we were just featured on National Geographic, and you helped create that. So I know that they could come to that Somatic Grief Retreat if that's where they're grieving someone they love, or they're just experiencing grief. But for you, tell us how we find you. Tell us what you offer so that the listener can reach out to you.
Yes. So there's two aspects to my business. So there's Equine Therapy Malibu. I have a staff of facilitators. And so you can schedule an equine therapy session. individual, couples, family, or corporate. And so we do all of the equine therapy sessions at my ranch in Malibu, which is called Shakti Ranch. I also have a equine assisted learning certification program. So for whether you're a therapist or a coach or a teacher, if you desire to learn how to partner with horses in your vocation or avocation, I have a 4-month certification program where you can learn how to do that. So I created a style of equine assisted therapy that is really kind of looking truly to the horses as partners, as collaborators in the therapeutic experience, and then incorporating somatic experiencing. So it's a little different than some other styles of equine therapy, which might be more kind of clinical models, or it could be more kind of leadership and communication. So my wheelhouse has really been kind of looking more to attachment, trauma, and then kind of relational skills. So you can go through the certification program that I offer 2 times a year, or you can just schedule an equine therapy session with myself or one of my staff.
Yeah, and now you're also offering CEUs. So level 1, you can get CEUs if you are a therapist and interested in this kind of work. But what I love about what you just said is you don't actually have to be licensed to be an equine therapist. You can take your zone of genius, if you will, and add the equine to that once you go through the training, which I think is just amazing, because all of us have a zone of genius and somehow the horses incorporate into that.
Absolutely. And I truly believe that adding partners to a learning or therapeutic experience can just, it amps it up. Right. And I believe that in any teaching therapeutic modality, that horses are great partners.
Yeah. Thank you, man. It's been so awesome. And thank you so much for being my first guest. And again, you can find Rosemary at, what is your website that they can look for?
ShaktiRanch.com.
Okay.
Or on Instagram, Equine Therapy Malibu.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Rosemary. As always, this is such a delight. And for those of you listening, if you want to find her, you can find her there, and you can reach out and look at some of the programs that she's offering as well. And so thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela.
Yay. Thank you. That was so good. Thank you.